Hi everyone, welcome to Lotus Chat Worldwide, where we are very committed to empower women collectively every week, where we come out to discuss great ideas. My name is Zian and this is Laura.
Hi.
Hi Laura. Yeah,
Hi,
thank
Zian.
you for so I'm so glad that we can make it today. And for this week, we are talking on the episode on balancing the value of life. Now, in case you missed the other three ladies, they couldn't make it because they are balancing the value of life.
I love it. They are.
Yes, that's right. Just on different areas. And that's what I think for women, that's what it's like, it's always a constant balance. So I'm very curious, Laura, what does it mean for you to balance the value of life?
Zian, that is such a good question. I wish I could tell the people listening on Lotus Chat that I have it all dialed in, and I don't. I'm better now than I was, but I still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Zian, for me, I had to really look at this because I have worked all of my career full time. I have a great career, but it took precedence over a lot of things, and so my life felt out of balance. And so what I started looking at, and when I'm coaching people, we talk about there are 4 areas in your life that have to be in balance. And the first is mental or intellectual. The second is physical. Third is spiritual. And the fourth is emotional. And so if something is out of balance in one of those areas, we usually feel out of balance. And so I have learned that I need to do things for myself in those 4 areas to feel like my life is working. How about you, Zian? What does having balanced life mean to you?
I love it when you started with that, and I have to agree with you as well. When I first saw the topic, the perfect side of me would go like, yes, I can balance my life. I've got it all. Look at me. But then, Lotus Chat is about being real, and I got to be real. No, it's not every day I can balance my life. I do get that a lot though. Like I do get clients and friends saying that, hey, you look like you've got it all. I'm like, from where? What, from that 3 seconds Instagram photo, or like from this 5-minute chat? Come on, So, but like you, I do agree that it is a lot better than before. And I think it also shifts every day. Like today, yes, right now, when I'm doing Lotus Chat with you right now, at this moment, yes, I'm balanced and I feel great and I'm balanced, but it might look different tomorrow. Yeah. So I think balancing the value of life is very individual, and it's really entirely up to how you want to define it. There shouldn't be a set definition. Is different for every individual. And at this point, I'm reminded by this really powerful thing that I read from Randy Zuckerberg. I didn't read her book, but I read her sharing, and she talks about pick 3. And when she said that, from her especially, because from my point of view, from my vantage point of view, oh, she's got it all, But when she said that in her book, and she said about picking 3, that really stood out for me, because she's right. And her concept is that, we've got our friends, our family, our work, our, like what Laura was saying, mental, spiritual, we've got so many different domains in life. But today, Randy is saying pick 3. And when she said pick 3, I was like, sometimes I can only do 2,
Yes, or 1.
On 12 hours work days, when we've got really power pack trainings, we do like only 1, and that's it. And you can only pick 1. But what that really helped me is that it shifts my perspective. It's like, yeah, she's right. Yes, who says balancing of life needs to be like a long term? It gets to be today. How am I balancing my life today? Yeah.
Oh, I love that, Zian. And none of us have reached perfection on it. So giving yourself grace, that is something important. I have a question to ask about this that I find challenging is how do we balance our own lives and not seek to balance other people's lives?
Oh, that is so good. Yeah. So I'll start with for me, I think focus is very important. Yeah. So I always hear this when people say, the most busiest people get the most things done. And sometimes I think that is actually really relevant for me when I'm really, really busy and that's it. That's the only time I have. I'm really, really focused. And in my life, I'm a full-time working mom as well,
Right.
but I also have my other life, which is my part-time academic studies. So a lot of
Yes.
people also ask me, how do you do it? But actually, when you really nail it down, it's only 45 minutes every day.
Right.
That's it. Yeah, it's only 45 minutes. During the 45 minutes, that's the only thing I do. Nothing else, no kids, no nothing. 45 minutes of writing my thesis every single day. So focus.
You're really focused on that.
Yeah, focus is a big thing for me. So when I've already scheduled the time, that's what I do. So when I've scheduled time with kids, for example, on a Saturday, we like to go for a pool with the kids. I only do that. I don't, think about my thesis. No, it's only the kids. And, being fully focused means also being fully present. Yeah. What about you, Laura?
For me, the challenge, but the tool that I use the most are, well, one of them is setting boundaries. And that's, for me, I grew up thinking I had to please everybody. And so boundaries are kind of a new concept for me because I always thought boundaries were selfish. I thought that if I said, this is going to be my time to do this, that somehow I was infringing on someone else. But that's not true. If you're taking care of yourself through self-care and through boundaries, you're going to be a lot more rested and a lot more balanced for the people in your life. But it took me a long time to realize that. So Zian, for me, it's the first thing is boundaries and saying, this is what I'm going to do at this time for this reason. And the second thing is taking care of myself. We were laughing earlier that self-care to me always used to sound like a spa day where you spent hundreds of dollars and you laid on a table or took a mud bath or something. But really, self-care can be free. It can be a walk in the park. It can be getting out to nature. It can be reading a good book, something that's just for you where you can relax and just be authentic. So it's practicing some of those tools for me that has really helped me understand how the balance of life is really important. And I have to take control of it. I just can't let life happen. Is there any other tool that you've used, Zian, that works for you besides focus?
I like the part that you talk about self-care, and I agree. A lot of people think that self-care is like, oh, a massive day off, go for a manicure, and then I'll go for high tea, and then I'll go for this and that. Actually, to be honest, sometimes I get the most self-care when I'm alone at home on my bed, rested with a book for 2 hours, and that gives me so much more value. I also like the part that you touch on boundaries, and what that speaks to me is that I used to agree and say yes to every invitation, but as I grew up and become more mature, I learned to say no. Yeah, I learned to say, I learned that I don't have to please everyone and say yes to every social gathering, because social gathering actually takes a lot of effort for me. So I learned that I can say no, and I don't have to please people by saying yes to social activities. So boundaries, I agree with you. I love it. Yeah.
The other thing that I took a long time to learn is prioritization. I always thought everything was important if they wanted me there. But I really had to learn to put my family, my friends, and my work at the top, and not always in the same order. Sometimes the family had to move, sometimes the friends had to move, sometimes the work had to move. But it was being conscious of what was more important. And I really liked what you said about the top 3 for the day. And many of our listeners do not work outside the home, and that's great. They have maybe the kids full time, maybe they have an elderly parent they're caring for full time. There are always things in our life. I just purchased a home, and that feels like my full-time job. But there's always something that's a full-time job. But no matter what your career is, inside or outside the home, it still takes a large chunk of your day. So it's prioritizing the rest of your life so that it fits in. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And speaking about prioritization, I think when we are very focused and we know what we will be prioritizing on that day, I think it takes off the guilt. I want to talk about guilt a little bit more because that's what I used to feel a lot. I'll be working on a weekend sometimes, and then I'll be feeling so guilty thinking about my kids, and then not being able to give 100% at work because in my mind it's kind of, diverted back to kids. But I think when you know that you have a choice and on that day I'm choosing work or I'm choosing kids, and sometimes I miss going for trainings because I choose to be with my kids. And when we know that we are we have ownership in that, and we choose and we prioritize and we focus, it takes off the guilt. Yeah. Of not being able to do other things, because there's only one human, there's only one of us, we can't be at two places at the same time.
I loved how you said it's a choice. And when you make the choice, you're committed to it. But when life just happens and you let it happen, that's where the guilt comes in because you don't feel you have a choice. I love that. I'll have to remember that. Zian, what are the tools that our listeners can use to start looking at balancing their life, what that looks like? What are some of the things that you've used or maybe your clients have used in balancing their life through the use of tools?
For me, Google Calendar is huge for me. So as much as I schedule time to work and, coaching and appointments, I do the same for my relaxation. So I literally have a calendar that says read Atomic Habits. And it sounds crazy for some people, but for me, that's how I balance it, because I know that this is the part that I need to rest. And I schedule it, because if I leave it empty, the temptation for me, like, oh, I'm available. Which client can I slot it in? So I don't want to go into that. So that would be what works for me, which is to schedule both my work and my personal life in the calendar. And of course, sometimes there are days that it gets to be rescheduled, but that's the ideal. What about you, Laura?
Zian, I got to tell the listeners a great story about you. So we went through a course together for 3 months, and we're both similar personalities, but Zian was linked to her Google Calendar. I'm like, everything that Zian did had to be on the calendar, and she wasn't going to leave any of us until the calendar was complete. I have the same personality, but I'm on the phone with my secretary who's putting it on my calendar.
That's amazing. Yes. So
you don't have to have the same tool, but you might have a different mechanism to use it. But anyway, that was great.
Yeah. And even honestly, our weekly Lotus chat, it's on the calendar because what gets scheduled gets done.
I love it. For me, Zian, it's really important to use clear communication with people in my life. And I'm going to be really silly here, but it's important for me to communicate to my assistant. This is really important. These are my priorities. Please don't calendar something over it. Being clear with my son and saying, I love you, but I can't meet with you at this time because I have this priority. Being really clear with people so that they don't feel left out or don't misunderstand. And there's nothing wrong with saying, this is my time for myself and this is what I have to do, but just be real and authentic. And that way it makes it real for you too, to be able to spend that time balancing, whether it be your self-care, whether it be your work, whether it be time with friends, no matter what, you've got that time set aside for that.
Yeah, I love that, Laura. And when you talk about clear communication, for me, it also applies to the kids. Sometimes I gotta be really clear with them. Hey, for example, last weekend I was away doing coaching. With Discovery. And I made it clear to them, hey, I won't be around. You won't see mommy, and mommy will be on US time zone, So I got to be really clear with them on this.
And then they understand, and there's not miscommunication. And it could be with anyone. I do it with my parents. I tell them, obviously, they don't live with me, but they're at a stage in their life where they want to be involved and hear what I'm doing. So I keep them involved, but I say, this is what I'm going to be doing. And they understand. And I
Yeah.
let people at work know I can't do this now because I have this. So
Yeah.
we have a lot of listeners out there who have probably enjoyed what we've said because it's very important. We've given you some how-tos, but I also know we have some listeners out there that are heart-driven, and they don't have a Google Calendar. They just live life. They flow, but they still have the same need for self-care. They still have the same need for balance of life. So how do we address our listeners who may not be organized to organize their balance of life, but how do you do that without planning it? And I know I've got a lot of people out there saying, oh gosh, I can't plan anything. How can they get a balance of life?
Well, first of all, I have to say I admire those people who don't need to plan.
I do too. But they are there.
I admire them. Yeah, I admire them that they can just go with the flow, follow the flow, and still be happy with it.
Yes.
And it goes back to what we said in the beginning. I think what a balanced life look like, there is not a should or shouldn't. It is different for every single person, and it is up to you to really define that. But you yourself will know that, oh my God, my cup is empty. I feel so depleted. I need self-care. You will know that. And when that moment comes, I want to encourage you to put yourself first. We always hear this, right? Put your oxygen mask on yourself first before you help others with their oxygen. So it goes back to the same. One of my recent clients, she was telling me that I really need self-care. I'm not loving myself, especially as a mom. I keep giving, I keep nurturing my kids, my husband, my mother-in-law, my blah, blah, blah. Where is me? So the first thing I said was, so when do you want to do your self-care? Tomorrow. Yes, just do it. And how? Put yourself first. Wake up half an hour earlier, sleep half an hour earlier, and then you get 30 minutes earlier before the kids wake up, and do whatever you want during that 30 minutes. Put yourself first.
Zian, I think you hit on something really important there. And we talked about it a little earlier, but it's prioritization. There was a point in my life where I was raising my son. I was keeping up a household. I have a career, and it was more than a 40-hour-a-week career. And there came a point I became so exhausted. I literally had this plan to buy a pup tent at REI, leave my life, and go live in Santa Barbara on the beach. You laugh, but I was dead serious. That was my plan, because I couldn't manage my life. My life was managing me. And I was exhausted. And people would say, schedule fun time. I'm like, fun? What is fun? And I literally thought the only way out was to get a pup tent, become homeless on the beach, and that somehow I could just sleep forever on the beach. Well, now I realize how silly that was, but that was a very real, to me at the time, it seemed that was the only thing that I could do. But I didn't understand balance. I didn't understand that I was mentally tired. I didn't understand I was physically tired. I didn't understand that my spiritual life was out the door, because who had time to even think about spiritual things or holistic things? And emotional, I was taking care of everybody else. And so that is where I shifted my brain and said, something's got to change. And I'm grateful for that, because that shifted me, knowing I couldn't really move to Santa Barbara Beach, that they probably kicked me off and the pup tent would get too small, made me realize I needed to make a shift. And so that's where I started doing spiritual work, where I started reading, where I started working with a life coach, where I started planning more, where I started cutting back on work. All of those things that I started making shifts so that I could have a more fun, balanced life. One of the things I was telling Zian earlier is I really don't look at balanced life and say, the goal is to be happy. Happy is kind of an emotion that sometimes you're happy, other times you're not, and your emotions can kind of take over, or outside influences can determine if you're happy. If someone breaks up with you, or somebody ghosts you, or if someone gets mad at you, then all of a sudden happiness flies out the window. But for me, I learned what brings me joy? What are the things that make me joyful? And that's a much different term. You can still be sad and be joyful. And so think in your mind about what it takes to be joyful. And that's what I learned, is there are certain things I enjoy doing, and I go back to those things when I want to feel whole and feel peaceful and feel like myself. But it took a while. But I think the key for me was the shift, realizing it couldn't go on. And so what did I need to do to feel joyful?
So what brings you joy, Laura?
Oh, well, the first thing that brings me joy that I really like is I like writing. What brings me joy is working with my clients. What brings me joy is cooking. I'm a really good cook.
Ooh, I'm going to try that one day.
Yes, I enjoy gardening, but I think, and I'm redoing my part of my house. That's fun. I like anything that's creative. I enjoy walks and hikes, and spending time with my son. He's the joy of my heart. And so anything that I can do with my son, Logan, brings me joy. So those are the things, and also practicing my spiritual life. All of those things are things that I do for me that bring me joy so that I can give to others. How about you? What brings you joy, Zian?
Very similar to you. That's why we're very similar creatures. Nature, creativity, reading, drawing, all these things brings me a lot of joy on top of, time with kids, time with clients. But yes, I find when I need self-care is usually when I'm by myself. I don't really thrive on self-care when I'm with someone else. I thrive more on self-care really when I'm with myself.
I understand that. The definition of self-care is self.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I also want to encourage the listeners who's listening to this right now, because when Laura was sharing about the time when she was with her son Logan when she was young, and probably couldn't balance life as much. It pings me back to my memory when I just gave birth to two child, and they're a year apart. I literally disappeared from the face of the earth. No, I don't have a social life. Everything revolves around kids, breastfeeding. If I get sleep, I'm lucky, So the reason I shared that, because I want to encourage listeners out there who's listening. We as women, we are at very different phase of our life. When you're listening right now, you could be at a phase where you just gave birth. So take a chill pill, give yourself a break. You do not need to compare yourself. You are at a very different phase of life. So what balanced life may look very different for you, but I want to encourage you that 15 minutes of self-care, if you could slot that in, that is good enough. And, on the other end of the spectrum, if you are listening to this and you're retired and, you're enjoying life right now, of course, your idea of balancing life is different. Maybe you want to look for a meaningful activity, look for eudaimonic happiness, where, happiness is gained from doing meaningful work, contribution to society, contribution to, nonprofits. So that could be what a balanced life look like. And my point is, it looks different for every single individual.
Oh, I love that, Zian. Thank you for sharing. You made me realize everything is really for a season. I remember when my son was born, and when he was a toddler, I thought I thought I would never sleep again. And now he's 26 and I can sleep at any time. So it's always our balance of life is different at different seasons. And just do your best to enjoy this season, because it will go quickly. It really will.
Yeah. So just enjoy the life at every season that it gives you, right?
One thing I want to share with our listeners is please look at our hashtags on our nameplates. Both Cian and I are coaches, and we love doing this work. When I shifted into this work, my whole life changed because I loved going to work and I loved giving back to my clients. And I know Cian has a similar experience. So if you want to reach out to us and talk to us individually, go to our hashtag on Instagram and it'll lead you to where you need to go to contact us. And we would love to talk to you. So please feel free to use the hashtags. I just want to say thank you for joining us today. I want to say thank you, Cian. It has been so nice just to chat with you about
me too.
the balance. I want to share with you, if you're watching us on YouTube, could you please subscribe and could you please leave a comment in the comment section and we will get back to you. If you're a Spotify listener, please follow us because we would love to keep you posted on all of our new postings or our new weekly sessions. And also we have an email if you want to contact us at lotuschatworldwide@gmail.com. And we have someone that monitors that just for us. And next week, Cian, you're going to have to help me. What are we talking about next week?
We are talking about when someone purposefully disappears from your life, something like ghosting.
Thank you, Cian. I'm so sorry. I was so busy stuck on Spotify and YouTube. Yes, we had a listener who asked and requested that we talk about when someone leaves your life through ghosting. And if you don't know what ghosting is, we'll describe it, but it's when someone leaves your life on purpose. And the feelings and what do you do with that? And we're going to go into a lengthy talk about that. So please stay tuned. We will be back next week, hopefully with all 5 ladies, but they're balancing their lives this week. And so Cian and I just want to say thank you for listening and we'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. And my last question for all the listeners out there would be, how would you bring balance to your life this week? So put it in your comments and I'll see you next week. Bye.
I am going to have to think about that. How am I going to bring balance? I'll let you know, Cian. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.